So, good evening. My name is Dustin Ephraim Weeks, and I'm here to speak with you all tonight about habits of healthy and happy families. I'm going to be speaking tonight about some very specific components as to how to not only take in this information, but apply it in a very systematic, research based way so that you can then set these as your default healthy habits. We'll speak about areas of spiritual, mental, financial, relational, and other areas of health. And then during subsequent weeks, we'll explore these at a greater depth level. We'll talk specifically about parenting issues. And then we'll also, in the last session, talk about child-parent relationship therapy. I'll hand it off now to Rebbe Tversky.
I believe that many, if not virtually everybody, believes that happiness and or joy are frosting on the cake, an extra in life. That it's intended that somehow we live in a way in which we get by, we feel that we are being effective, and that we're doing the right things. And that if, in addition to that, we feel happy when we're doing these things, that if in addition to that we're a reasonably happy family, a reasonably happy couple, that's an extra. And it's clear from the Torah that simcha is not an extra, that it is essential and basic to everything that contributes to our spiritual vitality. In the Torah, it indicates that the rebuke and its consequences are a result of tachas ashalei avadata Hashem Elikecha b'simcha v'tuv levov. That these catastrophic events are a product of the fact that we did not serve the Almighty out of a sense of joy and happiness. So it's not as though this were something that is a luxury, but something that we need to cultivate and pursue. In a family, if there is a spirit of happiness, it's a barometer of the fact that the family is a healthy family, that the family is a family that has love and respect for all of its individuals, and that the members of that family feel very secure. But in order to promote that spirit of joy, that spirit of happiness, that spirit of well-being, buoyancy, we need to recognize certain very fundamental principles that are part of the very bedrock of how we as Jews see a human being. In much the same way that we understand that a plant requires sunlight and water in order to be able to grow, the Jewish person or the Jewish persona is dependent upon spiritual nutrition in order to be able to feel alive. Without it, we may be financially secure. Without it, we may be even emotionally functional, but we will not experience that sense of vitality and vibrancy, which is a product of addressing the better part of ourselves, the more essential part of ourselves, which is our neshama. So if we understand that we cannot neglect that central feature of our person, which is the spirituality, the soulfulness of each person, and that the only way in which we are going to genuinely be able to feel that we are completely alive, and alive in the deepest sense of the word, is to be nurtured by spirit, then it stands to reason that in order to have a happy family, that has to be a family in which that emphasis on the neshama, the emphasis on a well-balanced spiritual life is a paramount characteristic of the way in which that family functions on a moment-by-moment basis. When we when we understand that each member of the family has a unique contribution to make, that each spirit, each soul is very unique, and that we need to pay attention to what those gifts are, those talents are that with which each person has been endowed by God to make his way through and fulfill his mission in the world. Then the role of parents becomes much clearer, because they need to attend to what they understand are the peculiar and unique gifts that each child has, and to foster and nurture and encourage those talents, to make sure that there's some way, some medium by which this child can realize his potential. Not all of our schools are equipped to be able to do that on an individual basis, and not all our teachers are gifted to recognize it. And that is really a primary function of parents. It's equally true that spouses need to be able to recognize in each other what their potential is, and to foster the gifts and talents which they see in their spouse. It's common in our time that you have one spouse who's working in order to support the career of the other. And sometimes that's to the complete neglect of the person who's working, who remains somehow locked into wherever they were before that course of study began. But on a spiritual basis, that is not something which we would allow is acceptable. On a spiritual basis, each member of the family must be able to pursue and fulfill their promise. It's something that, regardless of whether who's going to school or who is working in order to support the family, that there is room in the lives of that family, so that the respective spouses and the children are able to begin to work on and to develop their future and their promise. The feelings, the enduring feelings of joy and happiness are a product of our knowledge that what we are doing and what we are investing belongs to something that will be there for us forever. The source of sadness, the source of grief, the source of depression is being surrounded by things that are moribund, about spending our time, investing our energies and our industry in things that are ultimately going to crumble and succumb to this moribund quality that all of physical life is all about. It's a property of a physical world, of a corporeal world. Whereas when a person engages in something which is ruchnius, something which is spiritual, when a person invests in a relationship with the Almighty, when a person is growing in the direction of the realization of his spiritual potential, he is connecting himself with something which is infinite and timeless. It's the difference between depositing something in an account which we're constantly spending from that account, or putting it into a savings account which is going to be there when we need it. The knowledge that the world generally has, if only on a kind of a subliminal level, that everything that they're doing, they're working, they're earning money, they're being entertained, they're pursuing their pleasures, that all of those things are here today, they're gone tomorrow, they're ephemeral, they're ethereal, they're they are moribund, is something which has to impact upon every person who lives that way, with a sense of despair. Their lives are being drained into this black hole of the of mortality and the finite. Whereas when someone knows that they have connected with the infinite, that they have invested in eternity, that the things that they have become and the things that they have done live on in the memory of the divine forever, that person knows that they have a connection with something which is timeless and immortal. And in that sense, there's always a sense of pride and a sense of joy about what they're doing. When the spirits in a home nurture each other by emphasizing the real, the genuine, the authentic dimensions of the members of the family, and so that in every which way the family experiences in a very existential way, in a very deep and profound way, the fact that they are connected to something which is timeless and something which is omnipotent and eternal. That family is going to be a family that symptomologically is going to be a family that will smile because of the enduring joy and happiness that makes up the very tissue of these families. So, barring dysfunction, barring the fact that members of the family may in some ways bring their own baggage into the marriage, which is which can be harmful to themselves, to the members of the family, and consequently the fact that in that context one cannot transmit the feelings of the eternal, because the pain and the sadness and the dysfunction, which is very immediate in their lives, becomes an impediment to being able to deliver this very profound message. The members of this family will feel a very deep sense of reward, a deep sense of joy, of fulfillment. It will be a family that understands that it has a mission, and that everybody's mission is appreciated for what it is, that we are not being held up to a capitalistic criterion. We're not being compared with anybody else. Whether we are successful is not measured against some sort of a social criterion. We are measured against the gifts that God gave each one of us, and how much of that gift we are bringing into fruition. The advice and the counsel that will be part of this presentation will hopefully provide the context for an otherwise functional, healthy environment that will allow the very rich spiritual transmission that makes the ultimate difference in the life of the family to be transmitted effectively. And our experience tells us that always works, and that is our good wish and our tefillah and our prayer and our blessing that those who take the counsel seriously, who make certain to take their spirituality and their joy not as something which is just an addition to their lives, but which their lives is all about will certainly feel and experience the joys of their success.
Thank you very much. So, as we continue to look at these topics we'll be studying over the next 4 weeks, the strengthening that our Rebbe just gave us, you can see is already manifest in me. I'm already looking stronger here in this picture. So what we'll speak about over the next 4 weeks, starting tonight, first is going to be a basic introduction to these topics of habits of healthy and happy families. Next week, we'll talk about these same topics, but in a deeper, more interactive sense. We'll go through quite a bit of information tonight, and then we'll move on next week more slowly. At that point, we'll hit really the big emphasis of this presentation. It's not only going to be given information about areas that the Rebbe spoke about, of spiritual health, relational health, and emotional health and others, but will actually give parents real tools, vouchers for babysitting, so they can have some time to care for themselves, a blender to have some resources to eat in a more healthy manner. We'll actually give parents more of the resources that they're going to need to be able to have some of the health that we speak about here. Session 3, we'll talk about a variety of parenting topics in a more interactive group format. And then Session 4 will specifically focus on child-parent relationship therapy, a modality in which parents will learn some of the basic skills of play therapy to have one-on-one special play sessions with their children. So a little bit more about me. My name is Dustin Ephraim Weeks. I work as a professional counselor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as well as I do telehealth coaching. Over the phone, working with people on topics of depression, anxiety, weight, tobacco, stress issues. The work that I do with parents, face-to-face, families, and individuals is focused primarily on trauma work, as well as helping parents and families to really incorporate some of the healthy habits a lot of people know how to do, but have difficulty putting into everyday practice. That's going to be the focus tonight and over the next 3 weeks. Next slide, please. So I'll start, and then I'll hand it off to some of my colleagues that are going to be speaking tonight as well. One of the things I'm going to speak about is having a healthy support network. You just witnessed part of my support network. My Rebbe, as well as my friends Jay Frank and David Alec, are going to speak on financial and relationship topics respectively to talk more about these areas at which they have particular skills and knowledge. Changing habits is difficult. As we look at wanting to get to the place where we both know good information as well as are able to live it out consistently on a day-by-day basis to the point that it becomes second habit, default, that's a process. And that's the key particular emphasis of this presentation. Taking these habits and being able to set them as the new habits that we have instead of biting our fingernails. I'm not really sure why I bite my fingernails at 44 years old. But I still do it, and I'd instead like to have healthier habits. And we'll talk about some of that tonight. So this presentation is going to be based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow, a famous social psychologist, spoke about different pieces that an individual needs to be able to grow from one level to the next, getting healthier and healthier along the way. A key point here is that higher goals can really only be achieved once those at lower levels are accomplished. Tonight we'll talk about nutritional and physical, and then tie it into Maslow's basic or physiological level. Safety is related to financial. Jay Frank will speak about that. And then so on, going all the way up to the spiritual piece with Rebbe Twersky. One piece of housekeeping. At the bottom of each slide, you're going to see a highlighted little note, a key point. The kitzer, the least out of each of the slides that I hope that you'll take with you is going to be this main piece. I have a lot of information tonight, and some of it's going to be repeated because there really are some basics in what we'll be talking about. But that's one piece as a reminder on each slide. I want to thank Rabbi Kasowski for having us out tonight, being able to come here to Yeshiva Elementary School and speak to parents about some of these topics is an honor, both personally as a member of the community, as well as being able to share and help raise children that are going to influence my children and others going into the future. Thank you also, Jay and David and Rabbi Tversky, for coming out and giving of your time as well. And parents, thank you very much. In your busy schedule, you found time to come out, so thank you very much. So as you take a look at this area right here, one of the pieces that I wanted to emphasize in working here in a school setting is that school success starts at home. The way that we model for our children, the amount of silence and carefulness that we have with our words, as opposed to criticism, the amount of time that we spend investing joy and giving with those that we love, sacrificing as opposed to taking, are going to be keys going forward and will help to work through some of these issues. So then the question is change necessary for the family? In terms of my family and my experiences, over the past 10 years or so, I've done a lot of work to work through this whole first column. This is a synopsis of my life and some of what I've experienced. So I not only teach this information, but I've also lived it. Anyone that's seen me walking around over the past 6 months, well, actually about 3 months ago, I was done with it, with a terribly painful back issue, has seen some of the pain that I've gone through. Working through some of that, finding out that stress and anger issues unresolved from the past really at the core were key to me being able to get freedom from terrible, overwhelming back pain. So as you take a look at this piece, maybe make a note for yourself. Are there any issues here that you found are issues within your home? One of the things I've learned over the past 18 years of doing behavioral health services, providing psychological services, whether it's been in the Air Force or in my private practice or over the phone doing telehealth coaching, is that it's a lot easier to address these issues early on, when children are 5 years old, as opposed to 15 or 17 or 19, when some of the consequences and some of the acuity, some of the lethality can be much heightened. Through working through some of the principles that I'll be discussing on the next couple of slides, I was able to lose 20 pounds over the past 2 years and able to gain, to a large extent, a lot of the health that I had lost. So we'll cover two main topics. One is going to be the neuropsychology of habit change, both from B.J. Fogg's model, a social science researcher at Stanford University. I guess is probably the best title for him. He posits that there really is a mathematical formula for being able to incorporate and to be able to live out some of the healthy habits that we as parents, as adults, as individuals, as fathers, as mothers want. One is taking a look at the behavior as the summary of your overall goal. So the goal is to live a healthy and a happy life. He posits that as you look at motivation, how important is it to you to live a healthy and a happy life, as well as ability, to what extent do you have the skill set you need to live this healthy and happy life, as well as your triggers, what helps you to be able to activate that desired habit at the time that you want it, whether it's saving money, putting it in the bank, or whether it's having the one-on-one time with your spouse or your child that you want. There really is a way to incorporate this. And the key point at the bottom summarizes it well. If a behavior is easy to do, that being a high ability, then the motivation for the action can be relatively low. This concept of baby steps is something that people have heard before, and it's been something that, looking at the work that I've done with people over the past 18 years, I've seen literally hundreds of people be able to make massive changes with tobacco use, anxiety, relationship health, working through a lot of issues that for a long time were ignored, actively or passively, or just not dealt with. Each time, as I kind of indicated with the funny picture that I had on the first slide, each time that we repeat a behavior, we strengthen that muscle. In terms of some of the neuropsychology of behavior change, there is created a stronger synaptic connection, and there is within individuals a strong neural pathway that's created each time a behavior is repeated. Those behaviors can be good or bad. What I'd like to do during this time is suggest an approach that would help us to be able to identify an end goal, an end state, in which we recognize the behaviors we want and we intentionally move towards them so that they are a part of our lives on a very natural basis. The Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Avraham Twersky, he speaks about a lobster. He tells a funny story about a lobster will only shed its shell once it's overwhelmingly, excruciatingly painful. I've seen that in the behavioral work that I've done with people in my office. I want to instead suggest that we take a proactive approach at incorporating some healthy skills so that we're not at the point where we're only willing to change once the behavior is just too overwhelming and the consequences have been too severe. So let's look at another way as to how to strengthen this behavior change muscle. So Dr. Fogg gives this pretty neat graphic. And the main takeaway here is that you have motivation on the vertical axis and ability on the lateral axis, and you have at the trigger point, that's where behavior change happens if the ability is easy enough. So if I want to, for example, drink more water, I have at my workstation at home my 36-ounce water bottle within basically 2 feet of me at any point in time. I'm now able to accomplish the goal that I set 5 times a week to drink at least 50 ounces of water, which isn't where it's supposed to be ideally, but it's a big step forward for me. A key point here is to make behavior change ridiculously easy. Then, as individuals see how good it feels to do some of these things, motivation increases, and then they're finding that, I think I want to do more, as they start to see some of the results, and they're able to get to the point where they want to be sooner than they would have. We'll talk more about this in subsequent sessions. Let's take a look now at the next piece. We'll watch a short video with this, and as we do, please make note that you have 4 main pieces that you're looking for. Writing down the habit, figuring out triggers, replacing it with healthier alternatives, and incorporating your support network.
Typically, we are harder on others than ourselves when it comes to bad habits. They can be annoyances like someone who starts cracking their knuckles right next to you, or a friend of yours who you love very much but who constantly drops the word like into like every other sentence. Hey, but you've got one too. Everyone has at least one bad habit that they can't shake. Or can they? Welcome to Wellcast. This week, we took another viewer suggestion from Frantic Cow, who wrote in asking for a video on breaking bad habits. So today, you guessed it, we're going to examine why it's so darn difficult to give up chowing down on junk food or chowing down on your fingernails. We've also got a 4-step method for overcoming your biggest vice. Are you ready? First and foremost, how do bad habits even form? Studies by the National Institute of Health point to 2 main reasons. The first reason is repetition. If you do something often enough, say you twirl your pencil during class, your brain decides it can stop wasting precious neurons thinking about it. So it checks out and goes on vacation. You could be twirling your pencil through AP English, Social Studies, Algebra, and Trig without even thinking about it. The other way bad habits are formed is through positive reinforcement, which sounds like a really good thing, but it can be dangerous. Let's talk about that energy drink that you insist on sucking back when you're up late studying. Gives you a nice boost of energy, and it helps you get through to the end of that mind-numbingly boring paper you're writing on Chaucer. But the reason why this kind of habit is hard to break is that a nice surge of energy at 11 p.m. is an enjoyable feeling. And enjoyable feelings usually result in your brain releasing dopamine. This is partly why people often crave things that aren't even enjoyable for them anymore. The brain is jonesing for dopamine. But don't worry, my habitual compadres. Human beings are pretty amazing at changing and adapting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to obliterate that bad habit in 4 easy steps. Pause and print this sheet at watchwellcast.com. Step 1. Let's start at the very beginning It's a very good place to start. Write down the bad habit you're trying to quit. Start simple, choose just one. Step 2, learn to avoid your triggers. Take some time to think about the things that really make you crave doing your bad habit. If biting your nails is your vice, your triggers might be that last-minute quiz. Oh no, I gotta pay my electric bill, or how much money do I have in my account for rent? List these triggers in section 2 of your worksheet. Next to these triggers, write a list of ways you can avoid them. For example, read your syllabus every week, or make sure that you plan for automatic deductions for your electric bill. Step 3, substitute your bad habits for not so bad habits. Basically, you want to teach your brain by repetition to learn a new habit. So, if you tend to bite your nails when you're stressed and alone in your living room, stock your refrigerator with carrots and celery so that you can reach for something else to chew on when you're stressed out. Write a substitution next to every trigger on section 3 of your worksheet. Step 4, gather your army. You do not have to do this alone. Enlist your friends to help you defeat this bad habit. Start by telling them that you're planning on eliminating this bad habit, and you need their help. Just the simple act of letting them in on this battle that you're waging is a step in the right direction. Remember, your friends can be bodyguards. They'll stand between you and your brain. Tell them to police you. If they see you reaching for those nails to bite, give them the permission to remind you of your mission. Or even slap your hand. Whatever you want. All right, guys, let's recap. Today, you learned 4 steps for beating your bad habit. You decided which habit you wanted to kick. You figured out your triggers for this bad habit, and you decided on ways to avoid and replace these triggers with healthier alternatives.
So now we'll go ahead and go back to our slides. Let's take a look then at how we're able then to incorporate some of these pieces. One is the apps that you have at the bottom. You can use social supports as well as apps. Being able to have an iPhone or a computer or smartphone for that matter and use apps like this can be really helpful. The suggestion, however, is that a lot of times people continue to try this same way to break a bad habit, quitting smoking, being more planful with their nutrition, or being able to lose weight, and they continue to stumble over it. And eventually, what I found is that they can give up, get frustrated, and just say, well, this is just the way it is, I can't change. People can change, and there's a way to do it. Next slide. Okay, so we'll take a look at nutrition in these specific areas. One, I'd like you to kind of take a look at this healthy eating survey, thanks to Cigna for providing this resource, and kind of take a look at some of your eating habits, some of your nutrition, and consider as you look at this one subsection of a healthy eating survey that I typically do when I do a coaching session with individuals on healthy eating, that this can be really a spotlight on some habits that individuals think are fine. They think they have good healthy eating habits, and they may be quite improved as to where they were, but in terms of standards that are set in place, such as a minimum of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, or shooting for 64 ounces of water a day, commonly people fall short of that. So for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and skip through a role play that we're going to do here and then pick it up in session 2. This role play is going to speak about some of the challenges that a person has if they have some restrictions on some of the healthy eating that they know they want to do but aren't able to get to, such as an environment where there's lots of allergies. Being able to identify creatively some options can really be the key to allowing individuals to have that combination of about 25% protein, 25% complex carbohydrates, 25% fruits, and 25% vegetables that's ideal and recommended. Creative options such as packing eggs for lunch, or having like a salmon and veggie cream cheese wrap in a whole wheat flour tortilla, or being able to take some seeds, some pumpkin seeds or some sunflower seeds, for example, edamame, are some great ways to be able to have a lunch that's highly portable and sensitive to a lot of tree nut allergies and other allergies that are out there. In environments where there isn't a place to prepare the foods, being able to have these items really helps out. Having a big breakfast on the front end as well can be key. If cereal is what's right for the home, Having a cereal such as Total with raisins is a great way to fill your children up with a lot of nutrition early on in the day, be able to help them move forward going on throughout the day. As well as boiling some eggs on Sunday, for example, and then packing and preparing some veggies and fruits that are already cut up, already cleaned, having them in baggies so you can grab and go, really is another step that allows you to have the convenience and the portability to work through some of these issues with allergies. The other piece about the telehealth coaching that I like is that these are quite brief sessions in which I'll talk with someone for 15 minutes or so over the phone about once a week. And after about 2 or 3 habits or 2 or 3 months or so, some of these habits are in place and they can go on from there quite successfully. The encouragement, the accountability, and the format of a SMART goal, a goal that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-oriented, a lot of times is a key to moving forward. Let's take a look at another area of nutrition, and that's going to be different diets or nutrition plans. A key point here is that healthy habits typically take about 66 days or so to instantiate or install, depending upon lots of factors, depending upon the motivation of the individual, depending upon how tight that shell is getting out of the lobster, and compared to other experiences such as, has this person had success in the past, believing that they could change? One of the best predictors of future behavior is past behavior. So there is an incredibly strong link between mood and food. So taking a look at some of the research that was done and some of the findings that were posted in the January 2015 U.S. News and World Reports magazine indicates that nutrition plans listed here, DASH, TLC, Mediterranean Diet, Weight Watchers, and others, provide much of what's valuable for people to have success. So take a look at some of the commonalities between these. Depending upon the different approach, some of the commonalities are the importance of having a balanced diet. And the ChooseMyPlate.gov is a great resource. I mentioned it a moment ago that you want to have basically a 25% breakdown for each of those 4 areas: fruits, veggies, grains, and proteins. You also want to have a variety in what you're eating. Being able to have grass-fed meats, nuts, if at home, if that's where it needs to be, if there are some allergy issues, seeds, lentils, tofu, different creative types of protein such as beans and rice is a great way to be able to get to where you want to be, and especially helping children get through a very busy active day at school with bellies filled up with the protein that they need to be able to manage their behavior better. The research, by the way, indicates that children that have had ADHD diagnoses, being able to increase the amount of protein that they have in their diet, especially in these ways: sardines, salmon, healthy, fatty fish like that, really has been tremendously powerful in managing some of those ADHD symptoms and behaviors. These nutrition plans converge really on a couple of key points. The veggies, the fruits, the healthy protein, these are foundational pieces to expecting the emotional and the mental health that we want from individuals. Take one last look here at nutrition, then we'll talk about a few to put in place. A key point here is that nutrition is a sensitive and a complex issue. So take away from here some pieces that fit for you, and other pieces you don't have to eat. So we'll start on the left-hand side. There's a wonderful video from Fed Up that maybe we'll see in session 2. It speaks about the incredible value of taking a hard look at some of our nutritional choices. Right now in America, 1/3 of the population is categorized as obese. And in terms of our children, about 20% are in the category of obese, which is beyond normal and overweight. It's obese. 2 to 19-year-olds, about 20% of that population. And choices that can be made, like I spoke about before, having that water bottle within arm's reach can be key. That's why during session 2, some of the parents will receive free water bottles that they and their children are able to use to make, again, behavior change easier. Issues of weight, toxins, pain, fatigue, acne can all be positively impacted by this additional water. The other piece that the Fed Up documentary really does a great job of showing is the danger of sugar. Whether it's natural sugar, such as you're going to find in apples, or whether it's added sugar that you're going to find in sprinkling some sugar on the frosted flakes or other foods that people have, is going to really make it very difficult for the brain to have a successful day at school or at any other place. Because the brain in functional MRIs lights up with sugar much like it does with cocaine. Taking a look at some of the nutritional choices is really a great first step. The organic dirty dozen is something to consider also. If an individual is able to identify one starting place, they may say, I'm going to choose a couple of things out of the organic dirty dozen that I really want to be careful of. This is a list of the top toxic load fruits and vegetables that we have, that people commonly eat. And if an individual was going to choose some areas to go organic, these would be great choices. So, a couple of main points here. Again, the emphasis in this presentation is a neuropsychology of habit change, so taking small steps, like Dr. Fogg talks about, and incorporating them, such as maybe I'm going to eat one organic apple 2 times a week. That's the goal that I'm on right now. This is what I do. That's the minimum standard, and commonly I'll get 3 or 4, but that's the main piece. Taking a look at the second bullet, probiotics, nutrition, talking to your doctor if maybe some supplements would be right. There's an incredibly strong link between vitamin D3, the research indicates, and depression and anxiety issues. Being able to have a little supplement that we take that can be so easy to help individuals control their mood better is a nice, easy solution, and for many people may be the way to go. Right at the bottom, maybe sign up for one of the coaching sessions. I offer a free month as part of participating in this workshop for free, in which I speak with individuals 1 time a week for about 15 minutes about healthy eating, stress, tobacco, weight, anxiety, or depression. We'll talk next about exercise. In terms of different categories of health, physical health is one that sometimes can get overlooked. Whether it's for different reasons of living in Wisconsin, we don't have as much nice weather as the folks down in Miami do, so our fun time outside season is a bit shorter. So being creative with some of your cardiovascular, such as having a SNES video that you can use inside your home, again, that'll be a prize given away as part of this series, is something that for many families is going to be the difference maker to being able to go and have some exercise that they need to care for their health. Yoga, for example, is a nice way to hit all 3 types: strength, flexibility, and cardiovascular health. And speaking about some of the points that we mentioned a moment ago with nutrition, one of the clients that I have up in Michigan put it very bluntly, very straightforward. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. So whereas moving your body is fantastic, the nutrition piece can't be underestimated. The other component is going to be overcoming barriers, whether it's time that you may spend away from your family. Getting creative as a way to have fun time together, exercise-wise, with the family. You could schedule it like Bernie does, the 97-year-old Jew that I spoke with when I was in Phoenix recently, who looks like, according to my wife, he's about 67 years old. Actually, let me stop right there. I also want to thank my wife for allowing me to be able to do this video, to be able to do this presentation. I thank Robert Kosowski, and I thank the other part of my support network, but number 1 on the list is my wife, Chavalisa. There. That's what's most important. So, scheduling it like Bernie does, he was able to identify some habits that he has that allow him to be able, at 97, to volunteer at the shul, to be able to cook for the folks after Chakris, and to be able to just look fantastic, 30 years younger than he is. Another big piece, we spoke about your support network before, is going to be partnering up. Try to get you a good friend. A friend that you know you can call on, and if you call on him, you know he's there. Sleep. Oh, sleep. So many people will miss out on this component to their detriment. Some of the challenges with missing out on sleep include more difficulty with memory, bone density, psychomotor coordination. Individuals will find that they're having difficulty in areas of balance. This chart here lists some of the scary implications of missing out on sleep. And ways to address this include learning to meditate, putting a red light on the blue lights, as well as just saying no and recognizing a link between sleep, weight, and mood. So let's talk a minute about red light for blue lights. As individuals wind down the day, it's common to get out the phone, get on the computer, and sort of surf around and look around. Red flag. The blue lights that you find on some of the screens that we have nowadays really make it very confusing for the brain to recognize, am I going to sleep or is it daylight? Those blue lights mimic the light that we have, the hue of light that we have during the day. Recognizing that there is a time about 2 hours or so that's optimal to turn off some of these electronics is a key to going to sleep. And again, some of these little changes, little tweaks can make a big difference, particularly so that you don't compromise the circadian rhythm. The link between sleep and weight and mood is strong. As individuals miss out on that sleep, they may snack late. They may find that they are still online, literally and figuratively. And by being up during that time, their body doesn't have the off time that it needs to do some of the repair work that it needs to get done. So people aren't metabolizing some of the food. They're not processing some of the toxins. They're not able to give their body the downtime it needs to be healthy and work optimally. Whether this is for children or adults, the concept of this sleep is really critical, and this is commonly a challenging part for parents and children. Bedtimes is a time for a lot of difficulties, oftentimes. As you think about the value of sleep, one of the key points here is if you speak with your children about sleep, you want to both model it. That again is going to be the key to all the success. As well as giving choices succinctly and in a neutral tone. So if you're going to pull your gun, it's important to shoot. If you tell your child that you want the child in bed by 7:30 or so, recognize that most elementary age school children need about 10 hours of sleep, optimally. It's going to be important that you help them to transition into that sleep time. Let's take a look at a path to get there. On the right-hand side, you have a bedtime routine that really is ideal, starting with quiet play and having some key benchmarks such as story time, a time when you do get in bed, finishing off the day with some hugs and kisses is a great way to work towards lights out and good night in a way that's gentle and gradual and really relationally building. Looking at what's helpful for a good sleep night are some key points. Making sure that the room is comfortable in terms of sound and temperature, that the last meal is conducive to sleep. Not anything that's too big or too late. An overly busy night can really wreak havoc on bedtime. A notepad for those busy minds that come up with all the great ideas and all things they should have done earlier in the day. Having this notepad as a way to jot down some pieces and then that's offloaded, now I can go to sleep, is another technique I've seen work very well. Taking a nap, many people like to take naps, please do. 30 minutes or less, the research indicates, is ideal. Taking too long to sleep during the day can really compromise some of that nighttime sleep, and your brain gets the message, I really don't need to sleep through the night. I know I've got 2 hours or so coming later on in the day. Also, beware of ignoring your body. It'll talk to you, just like the gas light on your dashboard. Listen to it. If it says I'm getting tired, try to respond at that time. And then the last 5, happy and Tehillim. The point that I want to make there is that I've worked with lots of clients that have had a lot of difficulty with anxiety and stress. The last 5 minutes of your day, specifically focusing on happy, wonderful experiences, playing basketball with a dear friend, being able to take a nice walk with your wife. Think about these wonderful experiences. And your mind may wander away from it, so you just redirect it back to it. Can really help the mind to slow down and to ease into a wonderful night's sleep. And also, always davening Tehillim is valuable. So as a father, as a parent, as a husband, I really want to emphasize the emphasis on some of these physical components to health. So whether it's taking time to be very active, a men's basketball league, for example, that we have here on Monday nights, or for a person that spends a lot of time at home, extra cleaning, a very active, very robust cleaning time that a person seeks to do 3 times a month rather. Or also getting kind of creative in terms of family fun, maybe a family plank contest or some other contest which you have fun with your children in an active exercise way can be a big piece to moving towards the point where you have exercise incorporated sufficiently in your day. Next, I'll hand off to Jay Frank, who'll speak to us about some financial components and guidelines as to how to have success.
Hi. I appreciate having the opportunity to address you today. One of the nice things about a financial perspective in overall health is that everybody is living a life where financial components are critical. But it's not something that we're born with or that's innate to us. Like our learning about seders, about learning and about davening, you need to create a time to create discipline. Now, everybody has a income coming in and expenses going out, but the amounts that we choose or that we have from our occupations are all very different. But many of our goals are the same, and so oftentimes it isn't about how much you earn that matters, it's how much you're able to keep. And there are practical solutions of how to deal with financial problems and practical steps that help make people healthy. And while if you have a life right now where the income that you have is close to being what your expenses are, you have negative expenses, negative income after everything is done, and every month you get deeper and deeper into a hole, that doesn't mean that ultimately someone's not going to be successful. But there are tools that need to be incorporated. And while you can't state today, I'm going to be wealthy tomorrow, that there's no magic pill short of an inheritance or winning the lottery, there is a way of becoming fully able to become wealthy next week in your potential. And it has to do with incorporating some tools in terms of financial growth and envisioning yourself the way that financial people envision themselves when they're healthy and successful. So that even if the burdens are very harsh, and you can't see your way out financially, if you envision what is it going to look like and put the tools in place to do that and act the way somebody who's financially responsible acts, it's important because it actually motivates the whole process. So I'll give you an example of things that need to be done today. Some of the things are very practical. You need to make a budget, know where your income is and your expenses are, and if there's a gap, figure out how you're going to make that happen. Because living a life of deception, of saying, well, it'll all work out, Hashem will provide. Well, Hashem has provided, and you just need to figure out how your life fits into what Hashem's providing. But it can be depressing because life's not linear. When you're having children, it doesn't seem to matter how much money one makes. It's never enough. When the children are out of the house, that might be a time to be building wealth. I have found that for everybody who lives in our world, they need to think of the world in terms of 4 pots of money. And everyone needs 4 kinds of accounts. They need a checking account. They need a consumption savings account. They need a wealth savings account. And they need a Miser account. Let me explain that. Every account has to have a mechanism by which you know what the threshold is that it can't be less than. And every account has to have a way that it's getting money. And then everything about financial success, whether you make $10,000 a year or $3 million a year, is about discipline. It's only about saying, this is what I do. And it's a thing that rich people know that poor people don't know, which is just because I have a whole lot of money in this pocket doesn't mean that I can take it out of this pocket to use it for some other purpose. That pocket's money is going to support me when I no longer have a job. Or that's my kid's college money. I can't buy groceries with it. Yes, I'm really rich in that pocket, and my kid's only 6, and college is a long way off, or seminary or yeshiva, but it's still not money to be spent on something else. So that discipline's really important. So let's talk about the 4 pots. When you make a budget, and you go through all your expenses, and let's say, for example, that you find out your monthly expenses are $2,000. And let's say that you earn $2,500. You add up all of your net checks of the 2 spouses, and so they make sure that $2,000 goes in that checking account. Why? That's their expenses. What do they do with the other 5? Just split it. Half into consumption savings and half into wealth. Is that a magic number? No, but it's about the discipline. The thing that keeps people from being successful is they overthink it. Well, maybe I don't need anything in consumption. I don't need a car. Stuff happens. So you need to have a pot of money, because if you don't have a pot of money, your only choice are to borrow, go into credit card debt and other kinds of things that are really not healthy for financial security. So if you envision yourself saying, well, I have no money at all. How am I supposed to have 4 pots? The 4 pots don't cost very much money to have. And you have to think of yourself wealthy. So you have 2,500. You spend 2,000 goes in checking. 250 goes in consumption. 250 into wealth. Of course, we took Miser off the top. The 2,500 was after Miser. You have a charity account. Now, let's say you're really poor and you say, can't really afford to give to charity. So you ask your Rebbe, you say, can I give myself that money back? Because we're charitable people. Because the money you come in, part of it's God. You have to set aside. You say, well, right now I'm an ani, so I can write that Miser check back to myself. But why do you need to think of it that way? You need to think of it that way because that's the way rich people think. And if you want to have financial success, you have to think to yourself, next week I operate this way. It's not that difficult. Here's the other part, is you must have some amount of money going into the savings account every month. Every month, you can't stop. And once it goes into a wealth account, it can't ever be used for anything other than owning investments that will someday support you instead of your working. When it goes into consumption savings, it's going to go for whatever you want. Travel, repairs, roofs, all of those things. So, but it's a process. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize when you're going through this is because it's not easy. It needs a coach, just like learning Gemara needs a coach. Because when you sit down, and typically a husband and wife are sitting down, finances, if they're a problem, can also be used as weapons against each other. So having someone there to sort of neutralize all of that and say, well, let's set the goal that we both have. We're not looking back. We're just looking forward. Let's make these goals. Let's operate these goals. And you make a seder. You say, I'm keeping track of my money every month, whether you use a software program like Quicken or Excel spreadsheet, you're making goals. But having an advisor there to be accountable is very important because otherwise there's plenty of things to do besides counting your money, especially if you have children. So if you have a financial advisor, and it doesn't have to be a rocket scientist, it doesn't have to be a certified financial planner. I think it has to be someone whose specialty is money, because you'll be surprised how often that the only reason you actually look at each of those accounts is because you're having that advisor come, and it's time to look at those together and assess what is each account for, what I'm going to do, what can I do to bolster my income. So in terms of the whole picture, you look at financial, there are financial tools. I have brought some things that help people start out making budgets, so it makes it easy to do that. And I know that people can go from a sense of hopelessness one week to a sense of hopefulness in less than a week by incorporating some processes that they just never have had to deal with before. And that sense of hopefulness, it turns the corner on financial stress. If things you can only see going down and you can't really see the big picture, you can't change your behavior because it's not motivating. It's like a big black hole. But once you say, I can be successful and I have the tools. Look, I have a savings account. I put $25 in every month. You can't be poor if you're saving money, right? And it doesn't have to be lots of money. It's just the way you think. So as we go through trying to figure out what makes families healthy, financial strength is very important. You don't need to arrive at strength tomorrow, but you have to arrive at process tomorrow. Once you arrive at process, strength will come. It may be years down the road, but you'll know where you're going.
Thanks so much, Jay. So now we'll talk about emotional health. We'll take a look at some different ways that can be accomplished. Looking at this one last slide to kind of wrap all that up, there are some specifics that can be done in terms of setting up that financial guideline or process. Check and see if these 3 H's, habits of healthy and happy families, are for you. It might be to sign up with Jay for one of the donated 30-minute consultations that he's provided. Or it may be a $50 deposit into an emergency fund within 1 month. I'm going to start. At least there's going to be $50 there. Develop a debt payoff plan is one. Said maybe you'll find yourself here vacationing down in the Dead Sea and relaxing and enjoying yourself. Next slide. Okay, so now we'll talk about some components of emotional health. What's common is that individuals can miss out on some of the key pieces to setting the right foundation. Just like the foundation components, a secure attachment can be primary. The first 7 years are more important than the following 113. Kinda. Not really, but it's a great way to think about things. As individuals think about some of the choices that they make with their children early on, make your impression while the cement is wet. Taking time to spend with your children, whether it's through the child-parent relationship therapy group, or whether it's taking time to work on specific components of anger, or to take some time to kind of draw back and make sure that you're going into your cocoon, so to speak. You're taking some time where you're able to just feed yourself and nourish yourself is a key component. So there's some bearing checks to help you to know if you're on the right track. Give and receive feedback. Ask loved ones. Ask individuals that are also in your support network. Hey, talk to me about where I'm going. Give me some feedback. Maybe ask them to say, if I am coming across in a negative way in this email, could you give me some feedback? It's important that I send it out, but let me kind of get some feedback on it first. Also, and I spoke about this in the past, if you don't model it, your children probably, certainly, almost will not feel it, think it, or do it. What you want in your children must be within you. And beware of signs that you have too much stress. The key point is taking some time with your children. 30 minutes, one time a week, one-on-one, to have these special play sessions can go a long way to setting you up on a fantastic foundation to move forward in a great way and avoid some of the issues later on, whether it's bedwetting or tantrums or difficulty with school, fighting, depression, having difficulty with lots of other issues that I see every day. This is Dr. Gary Landreth. He was my mentor. I spoke about him earlier. And in terms of spending time one-on-one with children, playing with your child, he taught me a lot of what helped us. Okay, next slide. So in terms of having fun also, have fun taking pictures with your wife sometime, or your husband, or other people that are special to you. Whether it's right at the beginning of a pregnancy and you capture someone going on a pickles and ice cream binge, or where you just kind of staged it that way. Or whether it's something else, make sure that you're having fun with the people that are special to you in your life. The socks do need to get picked up, and the lawn does need to get mowed, and it is important that your children do their homework. But make sure that you push your children down sometimes in the snow. Or make sure that you just tickle them so much until you're both just beet red with happiness. Have some fun with your loved ones. Also, speak their language. Whether it's going to be physical touch or one-on-one time, or whether it's spending time in acts of service. Recognize, how does your loved one receive love? Gary Chapman gave wonderful advice in his book, The 5 Love Languages, so I wanted to bring that piece of advice here. And from the happiness video that we have, that will show in session 2 is the plan, we'll take a look at some of the 3 components of happiness that basically boil down to spend time with family and friends. Find something that's greater than yourself to focus on, whether it's religious in nature or save the whales, or whether you're going to cure homelessness in your community. Find something that's bigger than you that you can invest in. And then third is going to be self-improvement. Work on yourself. The research that's been done, whether it's people making $10 a day in Bangladesh or people that are making $100,000 a month in New York City, is that these are the 3 components, the foundations of happiness throughout the world. One other piece for parents I like right here was given to me by my wife, Rabitzin. Rabitzin Grossbaum said, I don't have to see everything. And in terms of one of the key takeaways with parents is choose your battles. Recognize what are some key goals that I have for my children, and make your stands there and be consistent there, especially modeling it. And other areas decide, maybe I can just not see that. Maybe I can let that go. So mindfulness in terms of our habits is a big piece of what we've spoken about. And in this comic we see a little note that under the category, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Beware of not thinking things through and deciding what it is that you want in life. It's easier for me speaking from an Air Force officer perspective. I had 5 years of training on this is the mission, this is the strategic and the tactical level at which we are going to accomplish the mission. However, being able to then translate that into my civilian life and to be able to pass it on to other people has been a little bit more challenging. So looking at some of the key pieces that you'll see here when David speaks about the discipline gradient, you'll notice prevention, communication, behavior management, and punishment. Recognizing where you stand consistently in those areas with your children is going to be a key bearing check. And recognizing how that plays out to transition that your children have. Transitions with birth, bedtimes, going to school or coming home from school, loss, parental alienation, whether it's divorce, separation, or things like that. Recognizing how does this play out and what can I do to maximize success there. So again, under emotional health, a couple of pieces maybe that would be your takeaways would be maybe I'm going to 5 minutes just check into my cocoon. The world will just have to spin without me. I'm stepping off for a moment. I'm just going to see how am I feeling? Where do I stand? What do I think? What did God teach me out of today? Maybe another would be a family picnic. Once a week out in the sunlight especially. Take time to go and have a fun, nice outing to Catamaran Park where you and the family have a nice outing and some fun times there and take lots and lots of pictures. And face-to-face time with friends 4 times a month. Enjoy your friends. Speaking of, that's a good time for me to hand off to my friend David. He's going to speak about relationships and talk about some of the key pieces that are going to be critical.
Yes, as Ephraim said, that one of the key pieces to happiness in a person's life is relationships. The more deeper, meaningful relationships you can have in this world, obviously the better off it'll be for you. And study after study has shown that to be the case. So how do you have those deep and meaningful relationships, both with friends, family, husbands, wives, and children? These are some basic forms of communication that will help you out. So as far as being either assertive, and you can kind of figure out where you are as for the majority of your conversations. Are you an assertive person in your conversation? Are you clear? Are you direct? Do you speak in, can you pass me that glass? I'm very thirsty right now. I would like for you to go right now and get this and bring it back to me, and not in more of a passive way. So I'll give you an example that my daughter usually says. She says, I'm thirsty. And there's a glass of water on the table. So she's asking me, will you go get the water for me? So we work with her and we tell her, Shoshana, if you want something, you have to ask. What you just said was a statement. And so she'll go, can you please give me the water? Absolutely, I can get you the water. So, but it's a passive form of communication. If you don't read between the lines, you're not going to know what's being asked of you. There's also aggressive communication. I'll use my daughter as an example again. The other day, she was out in front of this house with the neighbor, and they were playing with some type of chalk. The neighbor took the chalk. Shoshana didn't like that, so she starts screaming and telling the person, put that down, put that down. And so we had to speak with her about, hey, there's better ways to go about getting what you want. So there are times for aggressive type of communication. If your daughter is running towards the street and there's a car coming, it's a time to speak very aggressively and strong to stop. So very important. So these forms of communication, they all have their place. Passive-aggressive communication is also something that people use. A lot of times it can be used in a funny way. Sarcasm is something that people sometimes use it in a funny way. Personally, I try to stay away from this type of communication because I find it to be more detrimental than I do helpful. Next slide, please. As Ephraim was also saying, this is the discipline gradient. So look at this kind of and see, where did your parents fall into place here? Were they more preventative parents, i.e. they looked to build relationship They anticipated things before you did it and tried to set you up for success? Or were they all the way on the other side and really gave the tough love? They were spanked you frequently, or used threatening and scolding as a form of communication. The reason you want to ask yourself is, where were your parents on this, is because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And you will find yourself falling right into the same things that your parents did if you don't actively try and not to. So a couple examples in this gradient is this. So when it comes to anticipating, I'll tell you what my mom did for us. When we were young and we were not still learning how to play well with each other, she would oftentimes put us in the other room, because she had some things to do in the kitchen or whatnot. And she would say, hey, please play, gently. She would give a definition of what she was looking for. After that, she would then walk into the next room, but really she would only walk right outside. She stayed right outside within an earshot. She waited about 30 seconds, and the minute that she heard something good take place, somebody gave something to somebody said something nice, she would come on in and say, you did such a great job. You kids are playing so well together. I love how you're playing so quietly. She anticipated that there would probably be fights, so she said, let me give some positive encouragement on how to set them up for success. You want to continually communicate. Use family meetings, creative problem solving to address issues. I messages. I feel like this. Those are also going to be beneficial. There are times for behavior management and punishment, but you want to use these minimally. So let's use an example. Tough love. We'll use spanking for an example. When in a conversation I had with the Rebbe about training children up, he said, really, spanking is something you want to do almost never. He said, when do you want to use something like that? He said, one example is a kid running out in the street. This is a life or death situation, and so your kids need to know that it's very serious. That's a time that you might want to use a spanking or a scolding or a threatening, something like that, because it's something that must stop. You have to have that in compliance. He said, but other than that, he said, it's really something, he said, our kids are so fragile today that it's really not something that we want to be using. We would much rather find ourselves in these areas. And if we do have to use behavior management, then maybe time out or making a contract with the person, and then positive reinforcement. Giving the kid, saying, this is something that I want you to do, and I know you can do it. I know you've got the ability. And so those are things that you might want to use. Next slide, please. Align your actions with priorities. What does that mean? I say, I work in a jail, and so frequently I have inmates or patients who come to me and they say, man, I really love my kids and I miss my kids and I'm so upset that I'm in here. But it's your fourth time being here. It's your fourth DWI. You know that when you drink, you end up going to jail, and when you're in jail, you're away from your kids, and you're missing another birthday, and you're missing another soccer game. So are your actions, in line with your priorities? If kids are really your priority, if your family's really your priority, my family means so much to me. Are you running home after work? After davening, are you hanging out in shul, or are you running home because you really want to be there? Let your actions align with your priorities. Learn to be present and active listening. I think this is an extremely important part that a lot of people miss. If you'll be there with the person, don't think about what you're going to say next. Once this person gets done, then I can say what I want to say. But really just listen to them, hear them out. It's an extraordinarily powerful thing that I find that a lot of times kids are lacking these days as well. So another part that I really like is with your child, be intentional with them. Act like when they bring home something new to you that you've heard 1,000 times, listen to them and act like it's the most important thing you've ever heard. My daughter likes to tell a little joke. She's probably told it about 40 times, but every time she tells it, I think it's the funniest thing in the world. She says, Abba, I have a joke. And I'm like, yeah, what's your joke? And she goes, where does the sheep get a haircut? I say, where, Shoshana? At the barber shop. And we all laugh, and it's just this funny thing. But to her, it's brand new. And so you want to build that. You want your children to understand that what they have to say is extremely important, and that you're there to support it, and that what's new to them is new to you. Next slide, please. When you're having these relationships, you want to try your best not to multitask. Stay off the phone. Yeah, it's really important what you're saying. Thank you. Yep, your homework. You getting it done? Great. Okay. It's time for bed. Why don't you go ahead and get in bed? If we try and build our relationships with our family like that, we're really not going to go very far. And so we really have to be there with them. And when we're with them, we're not multitasking and trying to accomplish other things. Sometimes stay up a little bit later and spend the extra time with your kid. I think you'll see that it will give you great benefit. I'm going to skip down to the bottom with Gottman's 4 Horsemen. He finds it. This is a guy, they say, that can, in 5 minutes of a conversation, watching a husband and wife speak, can tell you with 80% accuracy whether they're going to make it in another year. And he says there's four things that are really big when it comes to really destroying a relationship: criticism, attacking the character. Why are you always? Contempt, emotional abuse, and oftentimes nonverbals that, yeah, you're so intelligent. I really like what you have to say. Defensiveness, excuse making. Well, you do that too, because we're taking our focus away from the problem, and so when you do that, it's really difficult to solve that problem. And so what I would say is focus on the problem, not on the person and their character. Number 4, stonewalling. People do it by being silent. They decide, well, fine, I'm just going to avoid the relationship. I'm going to avoid the conflict. And by avoiding the conflict, I'm also avoiding the relationship. And therefore, I'm not building. And so those are 4 things that can really be a detriment, both in marriage and in communication with your children. Next slide, please. So lastly, the things that I would say you want to try and hang on to. I'll give you one quick example. Speak less and listen more. I really like this statement. There was a therapist who unfortunately had a really difficult time. He lost his whole family in a car accident. And he said that he continued to go to work. As he went to work, he found himself just sitting there. And he said, probably 6 to 8 months, I did just listen. I really didn't speak to my clients at all. He said, after that 6 months, I kind of worked through my own depression. I came out of my grieving state, and I started talking with my clients again and giving them advice and helping them out. He said, and one of my clients very soon after said, I don't know what it is, but in the past month, I feel like you were better before. And he was talking to another therapist friend of hers, and he's like, how could that be? He's like, I was just sitting there not doing anything. I was just listening. And that's because that's all he had to give at that time. And so just by listening, we really do such a great service to our friends and family. Limit time with difficult people. We all have difficult people in our lives. And sometimes they're friends or relatives, and so we have to have them as a part of our life. But what I would say is just try and limit your time there so that you can optimize the good time that you're having. And so it gives you less time to have blow-ups, angry times, and outbursts. Spend quality time again, face-to-face, uninterrupted, happy talk with your spouse 2 times weekly. Why? Just give yourself something to discuss and grow and build together. Because if you don't build together, I think this is one of the main reasons that people end up after 15, 20 years, the kids leave, or most of the kids are out of the house. Maybe there's one kid left and they divorce. And why? Because they have nothing in common anymore. Because all the things they had in common as they were spending so much time with the kids and this and that, they just grow further and further apart. And so we have to spend time communicating. So whether it's by reading a book, Committed Marriage, a great example, whether it's listening to Sherem together, whatever it is that you're doing, do things that are similar at around the same times so that you have them to speak about. And then from there, you can continue to build and build and build. So in thinking about relationships, you should know that this is I would say the pinnacle of happiness in a person's life. You find a person who has really solid relationships, marriage, children, friends, and I'll show you a happy person. Even if they don't have finances in place, and sometimes if they don't even have health, but if they have good friends, they have quality relationships, this is a person who's happy. And so my encouragement to you is figure out some of these things that we've talked about. You don't have to implement them all, but just choose one thing of all the things that we talked about today. And if you focus on it and work on it, then I promise you, in one way or another, your relationship will get better. And in that, you should have much haslach and bracha in your relationships and your relationship building.
Thank you, David. One piece that I'll touch base on that he spoke about here was the rice experiment. I'll just tell the brief story about that. In terms of the rice experiment, this is something that Dr. Makamoto, I believe is the gentleman's name, did. The story's fascinating. An individual for 1 month set out 3 bowls of rice, a little bit of water in each of them. With the 1 bowl of rice, each morning he said, "Thank you" to it. Bowl of rice number 2, "I hate you." Bowl of rice number 3, nothing. After 1 month, and this experiment's been done time and time again, the consistent outcome is that the first rice looks pretty good, almost edible. It's starting to ferment a little bit, but could still be used. The second bowl of rice looks pretty rough, a little green, a little moldy, looking, you don't want any of that. The third bowl of rice was absolutely repulsive. The takeaway here, that relationships are so foundational that some people will even make massive career and life decisions about where they live related to spending time with people that are important to them. Being able to recognize what your priorities are in life and taking your relationships on those, setting your relationships on those pieces is critical. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the components of different diagnoses that people see. Oftentimes with children there will be verbiages of inattention or high activity level or impulsivity. There's a couple of pieces there to consider that I want to make here. One is to consider the broader scope of this whole picture. Are there any issues with maybe age-appropriate behavior? Are the expectations appropriate? Some of the research indicates that if males haven't reached 25 years old, their frontal cortex, that peanut-sized part of our brains, has not reached full maturity, then you're not going to get some of the components of long-term planning, problem-solving, awareness, and intentional behavior. That's more of a long-term, a longer maturing process. Is there a chronic disease situation going on? Are there issues with parents at home? Has a child had a brain injury, or has there been some injury in which there has been a fall or the brain's been injured to some extent? So taking a look at kind of the bigger picture as to what's going on, and this is a big piece I speak to parents about, is looking at the deeper part of what's here. Focusing on the whole picture, not just the behavior that's being presented, can be a key piece. Next slide. So we'll take a little bit deeper dive look at some of this. So in terms of this graphic that you have on the right-hand side, there are different components of the brain, and a graphic that I like to use with individuals is the brain in the palm of your hand. So you have your brain right here. Yours is probably going to be larger than this. You have your 4 fingers right here. This is your frontal cortex. The middle part right here, the thumb, this is going to be your limbic system. And then the base part here, this is going to be your hindbrain, is what it's called, your medulla. So as you have anger or a lot of stress, your brain gives you one of 2 options. It can operate ideally or be under stress. When individuals are under stress or angry, this part goes offline. You flip your lid, and people make decisions based on the hippocampus, based on their amygdala, based on the part of their brain that is emotionally focused. Ways to address that are mindfulness, deep breathing, affirmations. Being able to take time to tune in to that deeper part of what's going on in your brain can be key. And there's so much more to say about vagus nerve stimulation, mirror cells, synaptic growth and pruning, and we'll get to that next session. But suffice it to say that there is so much that's going on right here, 1 inch behind your forehead, that it's critical to consider that as you're interacting with your children. And sometimes there can be such an emphasis on this is what I'm going to do that people can make up their mind that this is what happened, to the point that it does even redirect physiology. My wife recently said that she was just too tired to be sick, actually. And that's actually exactly what happened. She ended up not getting sick because she just decided, I'm not going to do it. Her brain was so powerful that she redirected her physiology. Next slide. So let's take a look here at a nice picture. We can focus on what we want in life. So again, in terms of mental health, we speak a lot about innate health and recognizing the 3 principles. But in terms of applying this to our daily life, we have the quote from Rambam here that really illustrates this point, that a person can focus on the beautiful set of flowers right here before them, or the 4-degree wintry day behind the window. It's up to us where we tune our attention. The way that we are mindfulness could perhaps be a key point in helping us to have the health that we want, to be able to leverage some of the key teachings of the neuropsychology of behavior change to identify key points that we want to apply relationally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, or in other areas. Cookies, by the way, refers to the concept that you have cookies choices in kids. You give big choices to big kids and little choices to little kids. And one of the things that I teach in the child-parent relationship therapy group is the cookies concept, in which parents are taught to give choices in a very specific way, like cookies. We'll talk more about that next session. Next slide. So, take a look and decide if any of these mental health choices are for you. Whether it's deciding that you are going to 1 time a week, as my friend Rabbi Dvorkin says, momish, focus on a specific task and pursue it, then do that. By the way, this is what's done with some of the most wealthy, most successful people. They've identified specifically exactly what they want. When other people are sleeping or other people are watching television, Michael Jordan was out practicing. Taking a look at exactly what you want and identifying and making sure that your goals and your daily actions align to that can be a takeaway that you may want to work on and identify. You may want to decide that you're going to listen to or record one of the Rebbe's AM Shiurim that he gives once a week. Maybe just once a week is where you can start off right now and do it. You rearrange your schedule and do that. Or maybe you speak with somebody that's recorded it and get it. Being able to have teachings from great minds is a key component to health. I set a goal to read 1 book a week, but I don't really read it. For 30 minutes, I have a specific process that I go through in which I look at key points, and I'm able to take away about 80% of what I perceive the book has to learn, and has to teach, and I can give that over and understand it and apply it by using this process. Many books don't apply. This doesn't relate to many books. However, vast majority of books, it does. Next slide. So the Rebbe spoke to us a moment ago about spiritual components, and I want to thank him for giving that over. Rabbi really gave us some great points from the spiritual perspective as to how to have a happy and a healthy family and some of the habits that we can apply to that. So I want to thank him for that. So this is a review. We spoke about different components of ways to have health. We based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and tied it into these different areas. And again, one of the pieces that I've spoken about time and again is to make sure that you're modeling it yourself. Make sure that you have peace and happiness in your home, doing all that you can so that you then can expect it with your children. And making sure that you're giving where you want to find love. Give, sacrifice. More silence, less criticism goes a long way, especially as applied to your wife. So thanks so much for your time. My name is Ephraim Weeks. Please learn more about some of what I have to speak about today at weekstherapy.com or email me at info@weekstherapy.com. Thanks so much.